श्रीशैलेशदयापात्रम् धीभक्त्यादिगुणार्णवम् यतीन्द्रप्रवणम् वन्दे रम्यजामातरम् मुनिम् लक्ष्मीनाथसमारम्भाम् नाथयामुनमध्यमाम् अस्मदाचार्यपर्यन्ताम् वन्दे गुरुपरम्पराम् यो नित्यम् अच्युतपदाम्बुजयुग्मरुक्मव्यामोहतस्तदितराणि तृणाय मेने अस्मद्गुरोर्भगवतोऽस्य दयैकसिन्धोः रामानुजस्य चरणौ शरणम् प्रपद्ये लोकाचार्याय गुरवे कृष्णपादस्य सूनवे संसारभोगिसन्दष्टजीवजीवातवे नमः।
अस्मद्गुरुभ्यो नमः, अस्मत्परमगुरुभ्यो नमः, अस्मत्सर्वगुरुभ्यो नमः. So we're reading from Artha Pancakam of Pillai Lokacharya, one of his 18 Rahasya Granthas, or books on esoteric understanding of the different mantras given in Panchasamskara or Samashrayanam. And of course, Artha Pancakam can be translated broadly as 5 truths or 5 principles. So last time we read through the introduction and we read through the first principle. The first principle was about the Jivatman, about the individual soul and the different types of souls. And each one of these principles, 5 principles, is also divided into 5. So we understood 5 different types of souls. That was last time. So if anybody missed that, they can go and watch the class on YouTube. So now we're coming to the second principle. The second principle is not the Jivatman, but the Paramatman, the Supreme Soul. So let's have a look at the text by Alkondavili Govindacharya, the translation, in, I believe, around 1910. So here is the second principle. It's called Paraswarupam. So previously we had Atmaswarupam. Now we're having Paraswarupam. Para means supreme. He translates it as the God principle. Nice, the God principle. This truth or principle is subsumable under 5 categories. So again, there's a 5-fold division in five forms of God. And anybody who's studied Pancharatra, the system of one of the Agama systems for worshipping Lord Vishnu, should be very familiar with this division. So we have these 5. The Para, the supreme or the beyond, meaning the original form of God in Sri Vaikuntham. The Vyuha, the grouped. That's an interesting translation of it. It refers to the first expansions of God into Vasudeva, Sankarsana, Pradyumna, Aniruddha, which are called together the Chatur Vyuha. So he's just translated the word Vyuha, which he's translated as the grouped. The Vibhava, the multiplied. So after 4 expansions, there are these other expansions, and the Vibhava expansions include the Leela avatars, Matsya Kurma Vrahat, like this Rama, Krishna, Parashurama, Kalki, etc. So then the Antaryamin, the indwelling meaning the Paramatman, the Lord situated as a friend and as a witness, to accompany the soul within the body, where the soul is embodied in this material world. He travels along with a companion in the form of the Paramatman, who resides next to the soul in the heart. You could say the heart of the mind, right? We always say the heart, and it's described that the soul is there within the heart region, but the soul cannot be seen. It's very subtle. So the consciousness pervades the whole body. So the Paramatman is there. This form of the Lord is also there as a companion to the soul in the material world. So there we have the 5th form, which is the Archa, or the imaged. The imaged meaning the form of the Lord in houses and in temples. That is the iconic form of the Lord, which is worshipped by the devotees and which is very, very accessible, whereas these others are not so accessible. Okay, so we'll get into that maybe a little bit later. Okay, so Let's go. The para form of Bhagavan is the eternal transcendent essence, the spiritual substance, which is the numinal, the beyond, the supreme, or the ne plus supra. Okay, I didn't know I was going to go into Latin here. Ne plus supra, the supreme. Ne plus, above, which none other than round which rotates, as it were, every kind of cosmic phenomenon and manifestation. Okay. Secondly, the Viruja form is his being becoming grouped after derivation from para. From the para form is derived the Viruja forms into such groups as possess the fitness to perform severally the functions in the material or manifested cosmos of the making, the keeping, and the breaking of the fabrics of the world's countless. Okay, the making, meaning creation, the keeping, meaning the sustenance or the sustaining or maintaining, and the breaking or the dissolution or destruction of the fabric of the world. So creation, maintenance, and destruction. These derived godships have the names, and he's given the names like this: Pradyumna, Aniruddha, Sankarshana, and so forth. He hasn't given them in exactly the normal order is Vasudeva, Sankarshana, Pradyumna, Aniruddha. That's the normal one. So there's a footnote here, so we'll see what the footnote says. Let's have a look at the footnote. So it says here, see Appendix 1, Bhagavan equals the blessed or the God of all perfections. The perfections, infinite in number, are derivations from 6 primary types. So we've studied this before, that God has unlimited auspicious qualities, which are called in Sanskrit Ananta Kalyana Gunas. But those unlimited qualities can be categorized as expanding from 6 basic qualities: all strength, all fame, all knowledge, all power, all renunciation, and all knowledge. So from these 6, these Viruja forms are formed, that the Vasudeva shows all these 6 in full. All the forms of God include all of his qualities in full, but some qualities are shown more, and some qualities are kept sort of in unseen or in latent form within different forms of the Lord. So Pradyumna, Sankarshana, Pradyumna, and Aniruddha show 2 of these particular forms, 2 of these particular gunas or qualities in full, and the others are latent, or they're hidden somehow. Okay. So let's go back here. So number 3, the Viruja form consists of the avatars or incarnations, which we're very familiar with, such as Sri Rama, Sri Krishna, etc. There's also another footnote here. See his other work, Vande Mekram of Vedanta. So he's asking people to look there. There'll be a further explanation of the avatars of the Lord, the different Leela avatars that the descent of the Lord to this material world for different pastimes. Which Krishna mentions in the Bhagavad Gita. He explains, Paritranaya sadhunam vinashaya chiduskritam dharma samstapanataya sambhavami yuge yuge. Everybody's familiar with this verse. Yuge yuge means age after age, or time after time, or time and time again, let's say. Time and time again, the Lord appears. He can appear himself. He can send somebody who's empowered by him. He can send his devotee, his prapana. He can send his eternal servant. He can send somebody else, or he can come himself and fully manifest as a one of these avatars for performing pastimes in the material world. And what is the main jobs of these avatars? What are the main pastimes? The main pastimes are Paritranaya sadhunam, protecting the good people, Vinashaya chiduskritam, destroying or at least converting in some way the bad people, right? The ungodly. Dharma samstapanataya, right? Establishing religion, establishing the different codes of religion that he's given. And anybody who's gone through the Bhagavad Gita and any of the Vedic scriptures knows that there are different paths towards liberation. The Lord wants all of the living beings who are embodied in this material world to come to liberation and to come to moksha and to serve him eternally in full knowledge and full bliss in Sri Vaikuntham. So in order to facilitate that, he comes again and again, and he gives different paths for us to follow. Some of them are hard and some of them are easy. Like that, the path of property, we understand, is very, very easy because it doesn't really depend on us, on our efforts. But there are other paths which are being offered by the Lord, Karma Yoga, Jnana Yoga, Bhakti Yoga. We're familiar with all these sort of things. And he comes and he preaches these things from time to time, right? As he said, in different avatars. So these are three. If somebody says, "Oh, I'm an avatar," or "There's an avatar called this," well, we can look at that particular personality, and we can judge them by this. Did he protect the devotees? Did he destroy the miscreants? Did he impart knowledge of dharma, of religiosity? Did he give us some instructions like that? So, okay. So anyway, after the Viruja form, the next form is the Antaryami form. Falls into two classes. That's interesting. The one is the all-pervadingness of spirit, or God, the inner soul of all souls, forming the very basis of their beingness, their swarupa vyapti. Swarupa vyapti, I'll remind you again, vyapti means, swarupa vyapti means pervasiveness by essence. The essence of a thing is its swarupa, right? The word rupa means form, and swa means myself or my own or one's own. So one's own form of one's own essence, vyapti. So pervasion of everything in the material and spiritual world by the Lord is possible only by the Lord in this, according to this doctrine. This doctrine of Swarupa Vyapti means that only the Lord, Vishnu, or Vasudeva, or Narayana, these are the three words which talk about Vyapti, Vyapaka. These are Vyapaka names of God. There are many names of God. As we know, there's the Vishnu Sahasranama, and each name has some sort of meaning. But there are these three main names, Vishnu, Vasudeva, and Narayana, which have to do with pervasion, So we have Vishnu pervades everything from the inside, as we see with this idea of the Antaryami, the super soul within everything. Vasudeva from outside, the whole creation is like the body of God. This is the idea of Ramanuja, Sharira, Shariri Bhava. Sharira means body. It has some more meanings, but Shariri means the owner of the body, right? So the body and the owner of the body, right? So we understand that we have a body, a material body, and we're also the soul within the body, which is the owner of the body or the controller of the body, right? We pervade this body. Our consciousness, the soul, the individual soul, pervades this body and is conscious of this particular body. It's not conscious of anybody else's body. Right, so we're conscious of this body. This is the body we pervade. So the relationship that soul and the body have, in our case, the analogy of that is put on a cosmic scale with God, and God, therefore, is the controller and owner and pervader of the universe, of the complete universe. That is the idea of Sharira, Shariri Bhava. So these are two ideas: Vishnu, who pervades from inside, Vasudeva, who pervades from outside. And the term Narayana, which actually is a very complex term, which means he both pervades from inside and from outside, which is why the Astakshara mantra, using the term Narayana, is the most important of the Vyapaka mantras. Again, there are three great mantras. There are many mantras. There are many, many mantras that have names of God in them. as I mentioned, Vishnu Sahasranama, but we also have individual mantras where we have mention of Krishna, mention of Rama, mention of many different avatars of God. These are all sacred mantras containing the holy name of God. One or more of the holy names of God, but the mantras which contain the Vyapaka mantras, the Vyapaka names, the names which deal with pervasiveness, these important names, these are considered the most powerful mantras. And they are, for Vishnu, Om Namo Vishnave, the 6-syllable mantra. For Vasudeva, the 12-syllable mantra, Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya, right? And for Sriman Narayana, Om Namo Narayanaya, which is the Astakshara mantra, which is considered the most powerful mantra. So therefore, this is all to do with Antaryami. So how I got here was this, again, was talking about this doctrine of Swarupa Vyapti, which is, we have a doctrine, everybody, all Vaishnavas have this idea, everybody that worships Vishnu understands that God can pervade, in any religion also, God pervades everything. So everybody understands this idea that God pervades everything. So this is called Swarupa Vyapti. We're going to talk about another thing here. And on the other hand, it says here, and the other is a beatific presence, the union of mother and father principles of Godhead, Guna Vyapti. Guna Vyapti means that we understand that the other beings, the other living beings who can be empowered by God, right, with any type of power that God has, he can empower other beings, right, or who can also be considered to be also pervading like God in different places or throughout the universe, right? They are understood to be pervading by a principle called Guna Vyapti. That is that the liberated souls, even though they're only Jivatma souls, right? In liberation, they have unlimited knowledge and they have unlimited bliss. So through the guna, or the attribute of unlimited knowledge, they're able to understand what is going on any place in the universe. So therefore, in a way, their consciousness is pervading the universe. Right? If I know what's going on in any part of the universe, if I have full knowledge, that means my consciousness is pervading the universe. So that is called Guna Vyapti. Enshrined in the heart and ever watching. So I'm not really quite sure why he's decided to divide this into two classes. Let's read on and see what he says in the next page. So once again, let's start it's a very long sentence, but we'll start it again. The one is the all-pervadingness of spirit or God, the inner soul of souls, forming the very basis of the beingness, Swarupa Vyapti. And the other is the beatific presence, the union of the mother and father principles of Godhead, Guna Vyapti, enshrined in the heart, and ever watching and directing the, with systole and diastole of all the processes of the soul's being. It seems like, the way he's describing it here, it sounds more like what he's describing is Brahman, the Lord's impersonal form, as pervading the whole universe, and then the super soul as being the second one, and he's giving that he's calling these Swarupa Vyapti and Guna Vyapti, which is not really my understanding of those terms. Okay, so anyway, let's go on, see if this is explained a little bit more. Maybe, may not be. We might have to go into more detail some other place. So I'm not quite sure about it. So the fifth form of the Lord. The Archa form consists of the images of Bhagavan, God, which accommodate themselves to the various tastes of his creatures for their worship, having no fixed form. I don't know if I totally agree with that, having no fixed form. They have forms which are given in the scriptures, authorized form, but that which the worshipper may choose and desire to have of him, having no fixed name, but that which the worshipper may choose and desire to call him by, all knowing, but seeming as if not knowing, all powerful but seeming as if powerless, all sufficient but seeming as if needy, right? So it's interesting that the deity form of the Lord is also the Supreme Lord who is self-sufficient, but he appears to need our service, right? Thus seeming to exchange places, the worshipped and the worshipper, and choosing to be ocularly manifest in him, in temples and homes, in short, in all places and at all times desired. So when we desire to worship the Lord, we can actually see him with our eyes, and we can offer worship with our hands and with our minds and with our words. Okay, nice. There's this footnote here also. So let's go to the footnote. The footnote says, see under jnana, or knowledge, in his book, Vande Mikum Vedanta, Professor Max Mueller, who's a famous German Indologist, in his book, Physical Religion, page 201, says, the old commandment, thou shalt not make unto thyself any graven image, nor the likeness of anything that is in heaven above, or in the earth beneath, or in the water under the earth, has been broken by all religions, if not by making likenesses, at least by conceiving the deity in the likeness of man. So, okay, so he's talking about, this is what we call anthropomorphism. Okay, sorry, I haven't used that word for a while. Anthropomorphism, where people can conceive, they can only conceive of God in certain ways. So we conceive of God as a king. For instance, in Christianity, if you go to the Sistine Chapel in Rome, and you see Michelangelo had painted the ceiling, he's painted God as an old man, reaching out to man. He's in heaven, but he's reaching out to man. So this is a concept that people only see God in terms of their own limited understanding. That's what he's saying. So this is what we call anthropomorphism. That we think of God, we think of one aspect of God's unlimited aspect, his unlimited auspicious qualities, and then we focus on that, and therefore we conceive of a form of God like that. So the Christians in this example, they think of God as the creator, so therefore he must be the oldest. So they know what an old man looks like in this world, so they conceive of God as being a very old man like that, because he must be an old man because he's created. They don't realize that at one and the same time, he has to be the most beautiful, he has to be the most young, he has to have all these qualities in one package. So is it possible to fully conceive within the limited human brain, or any animal's brain, let's say, anybody? Is anybody able to fully conceive of the unlimited if they're in this material world and they're covered by illusion? Maybe in liberation, when we are full of knowledge, we can fully understand God, but now we cannot. So that's the point. The point here Max Mueller's making, is that in all religions, all philosophies, there's an idea of God, and it focuses on one particular aspect, or maybe a few different aspects, and tries to explain to us what is the unlimited. And we can't understand exactly what the unlimited is. So let's go back. So here we have finished the second principle. So let's go on to the third principle. So I think we have to do a little bit more research about this idea of Swargyapti and Gunavyapti, the way he's used these terms here, and exactly what he means by the Paramatma principle. Right, let's have a look at it again here. It's the Antaryami principle. Okay, so we'll have to look into that. Maybe we can look into the actual Manipravala and see what he said. We get Dr. Tirunarayan to help us there like that, and we'll look at the original text. Okay, so then continuing on with the third section. The third section is Purushartha Swarupa. So once again, to recap, the first truth, or the first principle, was the principle of the soul, the principle of the Jivatman, the individual consciousness. The second principle, or the second truth, was the truth or the principle of God, called the Purush. What is it? What was it called? Purusha, Paraswarupa, the supreme. The third principle here is the Purushartha Swarupa. What is the essence, or what is the principle of the truth about Purusharthas? Now, again, what does it mean? What do we mean by Purusharthas? The word Purusha means human being, and it's generally understood in the Vedic literature that, according to the Vedanta Sutras, Atato Brahma Jigyasa, Atato Brahma Jigyasa. So Brahma Jigyasa means the inquiry into spiritual matters can be done now. Can be done when? It can be done when you are able to read this sentence. So the sentence, or the sutra, the very first sutra of the Brahma Sutras or the Vedanta Sutras, written by the sage Badarayana, who is identified as Vedavyasa, right? Is that now that you're a human being, and now that you have sufficient understanding of language, right, you can therefore read these words, and you can attempt to, because you're a human being, you can attempt critical thought, and you can think about the Supreme. You can try to understand what is the Supreme with your mental faculties. So, okay, so that is what Purusha is. Means a human. It means a man, but it can mean a human being. Like in the term Purusha Suktam in the Rig Veda, there's the hymn of man, the cosmic man, let's say. So it means a person. Purusha means a person or people, means the living beings, and Artha means the goal. In this case, Artha means a goal. So we've been using Artha Panchaka. We've been using the word Artha as a principle, or as a truth, or as and here where in the term Purushartha, it's the goals of man. What are the goals of life, basically, is what we're saying. Purushartha. So Swarupa, the essence, what is the principle of the goals of life? So again, this section is going to show us 5 goals of life. Five different goals. And ultimately, the goal, of course, is moksha. The goal is to achieve, is to leave this material world and to regain our proper place as the Lord's property, as the Lord's servant, as the Lord's slave, and serve Him eternally in bliss, in ultimate happiness, in Sri Vaikuntham, in a place where there is no end to that, and also no obstacles to it. So this is also divided into 5. These 5 methods or ways towards the ultimate goal. Methods towards the ultimate goal are called these Purusharthas. Right. So this truth or principle is subsumable under 5 categories. Once again, what are they? These are 5 intermediate goals, let's say, or principal goals, intermediate goals, to bring us to the ultimate goal of liberation. So one is dharma, the duty, the religiosity, the righteousness. 2 is artha, which means wealth in this case, right? Wealth or material gain. 3, kama meaning joy or material pleasure, sensual pleasure, right? Or desire, we can call it desire. And Atmanubhava. Atmanubhava means he calls it here soul bliss. It means the enjoyment of the spiritual nature of the individual sentient being, enjoying his own conscious self, right? And then the 5th one, Bhagavad Anubhava. Bhagavad Anubhava means the bliss of serving God or of realizing God. So there is self-realization, the 4th one, Atmanubhava, and Bhagavad Anubhava. So there's Atmanubhava and Bhagavad Anubhava. These are considered 2 different things: the bliss of the soul and the bliss of God, of understanding the soul and the bliss of understanding God. Right. Now, he has given a bracket over here on the right hand side, and he has said that these two goals of human beings can lead to types of release or moksha or liberation, whereas these others in themselves do not lead to liberation. So let's see some more about these. So number one, dharma, and there's a footnote which we'll read in a second, or duty, is good works done for the sake of all sentient beings. Right, so he's giving a definition here. Such good works as sustain the moral unity of the universe, or that cohesive force inherent in righteous works that binds together all existence into a harmonious whole or unity. So when we're doing something righteous, right, this is what we're doing. We're trying to, there's an inherent force in righteous works that binds. When we say samasta kalyan, what is it? Sukhino bhavantu. We want for all living beings. We want peace. We want happiness. We want good. We have goodwill towards all sentient beings. Right. Dharma is unifying. Our dharma is separative. So when we work or we do things which are harmonious with the universe and all other living beings, if we work for the benefit of all other living beings, this is harmonious. This is called dharma. When we work for our own personal gratification separate from all other living beings, that is called adharma. So one is uniting, one is separating, one is cohesive, one is divisive. Okay, the other divisive. So let's see what this there was a Dharma had a footnote here. Read Itihasa Samuchaya. Itihasa Samuchaya, as it says, is a book about the Itihasas. The Itihasas are translated. The word Itihasa is translated as epics. There are great scriptural epics, basically the Ramayana and the Mahabharata, and those are mentioned here. Oh, this is what I said. Loka samasta dharme. See, I said loka samasta sukhino bhavantu. Means may all living beings in the all three worlds, be happy. Loka samasta sukhino bhavantu. May all living beings be happy. This is a blessing, right? And if we work in this way, it's considered to be duty or religion or righteousness or righteous. So loka, here's also similar words. Loka samasta dharmena dharyante sacharachara. So sachara achara, right? Dharmopi, which is dharma api, dharyate brahman stamba bhuter bhavadrishai. Okay, so maybe I'll write this out and ask Dr. Tirunarayan Ryan to explain the exact meaning of this quotation, but it comes from Dharma Samutraya. Itihasa Samutraya. First division of the Purusharthas was Dharma, and now we're going to deal with Artha, right? Second division. Artha or wealth is money, grain, and such other possessions acquired in strict conformity with the rules of Varna and Ashrama. Okay, so there's a system of Varna and Ashrama, which is dealt with in the Smriti scriptures, like the different Manusmriti and other Parasara Smriti, Yajnavalkya Smriti. There are different books, right? This is how ancient Hindu or Vaishnava society in India was arranged, and the social rules that went about that were there. So the idea of Artha, correct wealth, is that gaining possessions is possible to be done in a religious way according to the scriptures, and that should be in conformity with the rules of Varna and Ashrama. Today, of course, we don't have societies that follow these rules of Varna and Ashrama, so we can use some other. We can say we can probably translate the Artha here as legally obtained possessions or wealth, right? As distinct from illegally obtained or immorally obtained, etc. So using the same in the spirit of charity, in the service of the devas, the different devatas, the pitris, the ancestors, and all creatures generally, with due regard to time, place, and fitness. Okay, so the scriptures deal with all these things. They deal with how to in a righteous way, how to gain wealth, and how to use that wealth in charity, some of it, and also to as we said, loka samasta sukhino bhavantu, to also unify the living beings and offer compassion to other living beings in this world, right, for their happiness also. So that is the definition given here of Artha. The third section here is kama or joys, or desire. It can be desire, or it can be sense gratification, sensual pleasure, are of two kinds: terrestrial or mundane, and celestial or ultra mundane. So he goes celestial, ultra mundane. What he's talking about is the joys of materialistic heaven, where the devatas are, like that, beyond this world. The joys of this world are those derived by means of the senses of sound, touch, sight, taste, and smell, from such objects as father, mother, gems, lucre, not exactly sure what that means, grain, raiment, meaning clothing, food, drink, son, friend, wife, cattle, land, house, land, perfumes, flowers, and all such luxuries. Okay. Lucre, we just see the dictionary and just see. Lucre, I thought meant luster. Yeah, it doesn't come up in my oh yeah, maybe it does. Lucre meaning money. Oh, okay. Meaning money, especially when regarded as sordid or distasteful or gained in dishonorable way. So here it doesn't mean that, but it simply means money. Okay, so lucre, it's an old English term, I guess. So okay, so the joys of the other material worlds are of a nature much exalted above those of this world. So the idea is that within this material world, sometimes we talk about 3 different planetary systems, or we talk about 14 different planetary systems, meaning levels of existence. So there is some level, even if you don't believe in these literally, you can understand that there are different classes in society who perhaps enjoy sense pleasures and sensual pursuits on different levels. Maybe you have the prisoner in solitary confinement in the prison who is being fed bread and water, and you have another millionaire or billionaire who's eating the most rare and delicious sweetmeats in his penthouse apartment. So there's a difference. There's a difference in the level of enjoyment. So the joys of the other material worlds are of the nature much exalted above those of this world, and consist in dwelling in such bright regions as Swarga. So there's a footnote there to explain what Swarga. Swarga means the material heaven of the devatas. And we'll just look at so he says, if you want to see something more about Swarga, you look in Appendix 3. So maybe we'll look there later. Okay, and in being there bereft of such distempers as hunger, thirst, grief, passion, age, and death. So these are afflictions which we feel all the time. If we don't eat, we feel hunger. If we don't drink, we feel thirst. At the loss of something or someone in our lives, we feel grief. We feel passion towards achieving some goal or gaining something which is perhaps ungainable. Or passion could also mean just hedonistic hedonistic desire for some sort of sensual pleasure. Age and death, right? Age, we feel old age. We also feel we also experience death of the material body. So and they're death, and they're enjoying drafts of nectar, right? Nectar meaning in Sanskrit usually the word nectar is translated as amrita, means some drink that ambrosia that you drink to ward off death and to ward off all these bad feelings, and the love of celestial nymphs, apsaras, right? So, but all one day cease. Okay, so the idea is that in Svarga, and you can look down read Bhagavad Gita 9, 20, and 21. In the Bhagavad Gita, it explains that yes, you can go to heaven, materialistic heaven, and you can enjoy free from all these things like hunger, grief, and thirst, passion, old age, and death. But eventually you have to leave that place, and you have to again come to this earthly plane or this lower existence where there is all these afflictions. So that's possible, but it is temporary. It's not a permanent solution like going to Sri Vaikuntham and serving the Supreme Lord there. Okay, so then section number 4, Atmanubhava. Atmanubhava means soul bliss, and the soul bliss is also called moksha or release. The bliss that we have in meditation and absorption in the individual consciousness, the individual soul, right? So Atmanubhava or soul bliss, right? This is the type of moksha, though, that is accepted by those people called kaivalyartis. Those people who want kaivalya, they want isolation. They want freedom from the pangs of material nature here, from birth, death, disease, and old age. They want freedom from all these things like hunger and thirst, passion, age, death, grief, right? But they don't want some positive type of bliss. It's more or less a neutral type of bliss. It's far less blissful than the service of Sriman Narayana in Vaikuntha. And I gave this example before of a person who's dying of thirst. When a person is dying of thirst, if you give them water, it quenches their thirst. So water simply stops us from being thirsty. It doesn't really have any particular wonderful taste to give us sense pleasure, right? We think it's pleasurable if we're thirsty to drink water, but actually we're simply negating the pain of being thirsty. So we're coming to a neutral situation. From a negative situation, we come to a neutral situation. A real positive situation would be if somebody gave us a drink like champagne or nectar, some wonderful juice like that, some positively something which tastes positively wonderful, whereas water is just a very neutral sort of thing which simply quenches our thirst. So we can understand the difference in the pleasure of meditating on the self and realizing the self. The pleasure of self-realization is like the man who's dying of thirst getting water and quenching his thirst. Okay, he's quenched his thirst. So that is, in a sense, it is some sort of bliss, but it is nothing compared to the positive bliss he could have, that thirsty man, if he drank something really wonderful like nectar. Okay, so this is the Atmanubhava. Or soul bliss is also moksha release, in as much as it is the release from and the cessation of sorrow. Or, in other words, deliverance from the bonds of the revolving wheel of births and deaths, and the recovery of the natural state of the soul in its freedom from these things in the material world. Or the soul life confined to itself without objective contacts, in a condition called kaivalya or isolation, a purely psychic state, but not divine. That's interesting that he writes that there. A purely psychic state, but not divine. It isn't divine because it doesn't have anything to do with God. It has only to do with the individual soul. So he calls it a psychic state. A psychic state means it has to do with our own mental impressions, our own consciousness, and therefore we enjoy our own consciousness, devoid of contact with any other person or any other thing, including God. So that is called Atmanubhava, Kaivalya Mukti, right? So Bhagavad Anubhava, this is true moksha, right? Bhagavad Anubhava or God bliss is true moksha or release, inasmuch as it is not only attended by the cessation of all the recurring cycles of physical life, birth, disease, old age, and death, but is release followed by God bliss, the acme of the soul's aspiration and destiny. So this is the ultimate destiny and aspiration of the soul is to engage and have that personal relationship with God, of service to God, in Sri Vaikuntha forever, without any hindrances, and experience that bliss, which is an unlimited bliss compared to the other bliss of self-realization that is much greater. So a total effacement or remission of all the effects of deeds done, meaning we get rid of all of our karmas, good or bad, which all the reactions to all our activities here in this material world, which is what we call karmas, which force the soul into material bondage. So the soul, trapped in this material body, is associated with matter from time immemorial, and therefore, because of his actions in this material world, is covered by this burden of good and bad actions and their results, right? So a total effacement or remission of all the effects of deeds done, good or bad, which force the soul into material bondage, takes place, and the gross body, which is the medium for experiencing the effects of such deeds, either the suffering or the enjoyment, right? And there's a footnote here, which we'll go to in a minute, which is the seat of the sixfold states. There's another footnote here to explain that, or modifications. Eventuating therein, that is, the conception, delivery, change, growth, decline, and death, which is the abode of the threefold miseries, that is, Adhyatmika, Adibhautika, Adidaivika. So Adhyatmika means problems and sufferings that we incur from our own mind and body, right? Sufferings, Adibhautika, which we incur from other living beings in this world, and Adidaivika, natural calamities that we suffer in this material world. We can say from the devatas in heaven, they've caused some natural calamities because they're in charge of that. But we can just say natural calamities in this world, like storms and weather, earthquakes, natural things that happen in this material world. Which screens God from the soul and breeds delusion, right? These things screen God from the soul and they bring delusion, right? Which in short is the root of samsara, is sloughed off, right? So when we attain liberation, when we attain this type of liberation, all of these miseries and all of these modifications and sufferings and karmas, past karmas, are all sloughed off. They're all left, they're all discarded, right? The soul then enters along with the body. The body is the source and the method for working out these different karmas, right? So the body, when the body falls, which is called videha mukti, without body. V means without. Videha, deha means body. So without the body, both gross and subtle, when that is dissolved, the soul shines forth in its pristine essence. And at that time, the soul is able to serve the Supreme Lord in perfection. So the soul then enters through the Sushumnandi. The Sushumnandi, now a nadi means like a river, right? A nadi means a river. In this sense, the Sushumnandi, there are three subtle nerves which are considered to be in the spine of the person, right? And two of those nerves start out on either side of the base of the spine, and they travel up the spine and cross over at certain points. Where they cross over is understood in the yogic sciences and the shastras to be a place called a chakra, or a point of power. So these are like nerves that cross over like that, and where they cross over, there's a chakra. And they ultimately come up to the top of the head, right? There's another pathway which is going, or nerve, which goes directly up, straight up. That is called the Sushumna Nadi. So we have the Ida, the Pingala, and the Sushumna. The Ida starts on the left side and crosses over to the right side after different chakras, goes up and up like that. And the Pingala is on the right side at the base of the spine, and then they both cross over. Whereas the Sushumna is in the middle and goes completely up the spine like that, or is conceived of like that. And so what he's saying here is that the Sushumna Nadi, the soul is supposed to enter that pathway, exit from the top of the skull, right? Rises into the head and rupturing the crown of the skull, soars aloof in the subtle body, which is made in the Gita, in the Bhagavad Gita, it's described the subtle body as the mind, the intelligence, and the ego. These are subtle elements. Journeying through the Acharati path. The Acharati path is called the path of light, which we discussed previously in our series on Yatina Maladipika, describes in more detail the path of light leading towards Vaikuntha, right? And piercing through the orb of the sun, reaches the bounds of physical nature defined by the Viruja River, which is the boundary between the material and spiritual worlds. So there are some notes here. So let's have a look at the notes. So note number 1 was about experiencing the effects of such deeds, enjoyment and such as enjoyment and suffering. So here he says, it must be noted that this gross body is only the medium or vehicle by means of which pleasures and pains are conveyed to the mind, subtle body, and thence transmitted to the soul, which is the sufferer, or we could say also the enjoyer in the case of pleasures, right? Mind, according to Vedanta, is a subtle material. What mind stands for in the English language is consciousness, which is the inseparable attributive adjunct of the soul, right? You can't separate consciousness from the soul. The soul is consciousness, the soul is knowledge. The Vedantic mind is said to garner and retain all germs of deeds committed by the soul to be played out on the material planes, to be available for a new harvest in incarnations to come. Read Itihasa Samuchaya. So again, he's quoting from Itihasa Samuchaya. He says, Manaha karma mayam prahu sarva prana vitam buddhaha tata chestate tesam bhavi karma halam yata. So what I'll do is I'll write out these particular verses and ask Dr. Tirunarayan if you can give us a good translation of these. So that is footnote 1. Footnote 2 has to do with the sixfold states, which is the seat. So we're talking about the body here. The body is the seat of sixfold states of modifications. I think we went through those in the translation. These are called Shad Bhava Vikaras. Right, so what do they mean? Birth, growth, there are 6 of them. Off the top of my head, I'm not thinking of them, but we've got old age, disease, and death. We have modification, producing byproducts, etc. So there's six phases of the body. Okay, so then we have number 3. Three talks about the threefold miseries, the adhyatmic, adibhotic, adidaivic. So let's have a look and see what they are. The tapatraya, the tapatraya. Tapa means hot. It can mean pain. So there are these three problems that we have in this material world. Three aspects which we talked about it just before. For example, the eye is adhyatma, any sight or shape outside it affecting the eye is adibhuta, right? And the sun is adideva. Tapatraya, the 3 tapas. Right. Pain may be engendered by any of these 3 causes. The senses, the object, and the presiding deity. Okay. So within us, the pain can come from within ourselves, the pain can come from outside of ourselves, and the pain can come from the presiding deities of this world, right? Including the Supreme Lord, right? In brief, adhyatma is the organ of sense, adibhuta is the object of function, and adideva is the power or higher intelligence which makes these 2 and contacts between them possible. Okay, so then 4 is talking about the Viruja River, which again is the border between the material and spiritual worlds. Viruja is literally the purifying element, by immersion in which all the rajas, taints or taint, V disappear, right? So V again means without, right? So here he's saying V means disappear, and rajas means the taints or the wrong, the material aspects of the personality, both gross and subtle, disappear. So without taint, Viruja means without taint. It is the place where all those things are left behind. If incredulity forbids the acceptance of a river, right? So it's conceived of a river. Why? Because it's when we're dirty, we go down to a river, we wash ourselves in the river. When we come out, we're clean, right? So this is the analogy. This is an analogy like that. So either you can, some people think of it as an actual type of river, and other people, he's saying, if you're incredulous to that idea, right? If you can't accept it as being a real river, right? He says, if incredulity forbids the acceptance of a river forming the boundary between the terrestrial and celestial, meaning Sri Vaikuntham is celestial, not Swarga, it is admissible as a symbol. Okay, so it's just a boundary. It's a boundary beyond which there is nothing material. We are bound by the very necessities of language to speak of the spiritual terms in terms of material, right? So we give these analogies of a river, right, to explain to people how you go and you purify yourself totally and go to Sri Vaikuntham. How you leave behind any taint of materialistic life and this body, and both gross and subtle, before going there. And he says you can also see his book, The Lives of the Alwars, and look at page 11, which seems to be in the introduction. For the Acharya paths, see Bhagavad Gita 8:24 to 28, and the footnote references therein. So we can also look. Kondavila Govindacharya has several other books. The Lives of the Alwars is one of them. And he's also translated the whole Bhagavad Gita, so we can look at his Bhagavad Gita sometime. It's very nice. So here he's given the references for that. So now to continue on, the sentence here starts with here. Here, meaning the Viruja, which is conceived of as a river, but is a boundary beyond which material things cannot pass, only spiritual, only spirit can pass. By a plunge into its sacred waters, right? Here's the analogy of the river. The soul is rid of all the subtle remnants of physical defilement, as well as the subtle body, right? Mind, intelligence, and ego, still adhering to it, and is anon received on emerging from that holy immersion by a glorious personage called Amanava, whose very touch soothes and dispenses forever all the pangs endured in this ionic peregrinations in collusion with physical nature. That's a very flowery way of saying that all the pangs of this material world are given up when one meets this personality called Amanava, after washing off all material things in the river called Viruja and entering into Sri Vaikuntha proper. The released soul is then robbed. So, excuse me. The released soul is then robed in a body of light and glory, which is called Panchopanishad Maya, right? So we'll get to an explanation of what that means in a minute, right? But it's made of Shuddha. Anyway, a body which obstructs not, but is made of such light stuff as helps the raying forth of the powers of the soul, which are knowledge, bliss, and divine service. A body which is fitted for no other purpose than the service of God. A body, in short, radiant, celestial, spiritual, divine. The soul is then conducted with due pomp and state in cortege into the beatific presence of God, who is visualized there as seated exaltedly in a celestial pavilion made of such ineffable stuff as is celestial, supported on either side by Shri, Bhu, and Nila, his consorts, right? And other hosts of beings and objects, glorious and past compare or conception, beyond compare and beyond conception. So we're just trying to conceive of this. These celestial hosts come and go before the august presence in incessant procession, bent on serving the Lord, actuated by love indescribable, service before a presence indistinct and vibrant with visions of beauty, flitting before their vision in ever new forms, like golden eddies, in perpetual making and unmaking, rippling along a stream as of molten gold. Okay, so that's a very, very flowery paragraph, trying to give us an idea, a concept of what is inconceivable. This beatific presence is no other than the High Lord of Vaikuntha, and there are some footnotes here, so let's look at the footnotes before we go to the next page. The first footnote is about the Panchapanishad Maya, the body, the spiritual body that the soul has in Sri Vaikuntha. And as I said here, he says, this is the Shuddha Sattva nature. See his book, Prabandhe Mekum Vedanta, page 67. And that is the radiant or spiritual matter, if it may be so called, having 5 Upanishads or Shaktis, powers or properties, called Parameshti, Puman, Vishva, Nivriti, and Sarva. Also read Vrida Harita Smriti, 7th chapter, Adhyaya, and Padma Samhita of the Pancharatra or Bhagavad Shastra, chapter 12, Jnanakanda. Okay, so these are all explained in different scriptures, which he's mentioned here. The nature of everything in Vaikuntha, the nature of everything in Vaikuntha, which is not directly the Lord, the body of the Lord or the Lord, and directly the individual Atman, the nature of everything is made of this Shuddha Sattva. Shuddha Sattva, which is sort of like the spiritual matter, pure matter. like that. It's described in the Yadinyamadipika, which we just studied. So the second footnote has to do with Sri Bhu and Nila, the three consorts of the Lord who were there in Sri Vaikuntham, who were supporting him, or sitting next to him. And he says in the footnote, see the note on page 15 and page 43, pages 43 and 44 of our Lives of the Alwars. So we'll have to go and look at that book as well. Right, then 3, we have a stream of molten gold, which was described here, that the whole scene appears to be like a stream of molten gold, all these people coming in, these different living beings coming and serving the Supreme Lord. So he says here, for this, go and look at the Chandogya Upanishad in the first section, 166. And he quotes the sloka from there. He quotes the Sanskrit from there. Apranakyat sarva eva suvarnaha. Suvarnaha, of course, means gold. So this is where he gets this idea of the stream of molten gold. And also in the Taittiriya Upanishad 3:10:6. Suvarna Jyoti, right? So in Taittiriya Upanishad it says Suvarna Jyoti Ya evam Veda Ityupanishati, right? So etc. etc. And so we can look that up also. This is in the Brigavali of the Taittiriya Upanishad, the third part. Okay, let's continue on. So this beatific presence is none other than the High Lord of Vaikuntha, Vaikuntha Nata. And we'll see what that means in a footnote also. Vaikuntha Nata, which normally means Nata means the Lord, Lord of Vaikuntha, or the changeless, all absolute being, the immutable, beyond the perishable, whose joy without cessation is now granted, whose joy without cessation is now granted to the saved soul. So he's granting us infinite joy, right? Granting to the saved soul as the high reward at the end of his evolutionary journey. So our sojourn in this material world is called an evolutionary journey from till we evolve to our proper state, our original form of being in complete subservience and serving the Lord. Evolutionary journey, and the boon of whose service is to him conferred in terms of eternity. So he grants us, therefore, his eternal service. Thus is reached the ne plus ultra of blessedness. Parama Purushartha, the supreme. Parama means the supreme Purushartha, the supreme goal of human life. That bliss of personally serving the Supreme Lord in Vaikuntha. In other words, the soul long, loving divine service, Yavad Atma Bhavi, right? The soul is longing for that, right? That loving divine service which is not a task, right? But a prerogative. A service joying in the work. Enjoying, I would say, enjoying in the work. So it's not a task in the sense that we understand it to be onerous, but it's enjoyable. It's an enjoyable type of service. We did 2 principles today, which is good because last time we did the introduction and the first principle. So we've done, which was again the principle of the soul. Then we did today the principle of God and the principle of the different goals of human existence. And now the third principle is the means to reach those goals. The means to reach those goals. So we'll pick that up next week. And that is the Upaya Swarupa.